Aloha and good afternoon to everyone in Hawaii, and good morning to our friends in Australia and New Zealand who are joining us as speakers, and we have a few attendees I see from that region too. My name is Rob Hack. I'm from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. We are a nonprofit in Honolulu, department, where as council works, what's often called a deck that is spread out throughout the United States. And it is our job at the Hawaii Pacific Export Council to help Hawaii and Pacific Island companies export products. And just to be clear and pedantic about it at the beginning, what is an export? An export is to a foreign country. So the mainland US, Guam, Saipan, that doesn't count, but a foreign country such as Japan or Germany, Brazil, Mexico, that certainly counts. And today, of course, we're talking about exporting from Hawaii to Australia and New Zealand. The Hawaii Pacific Export Council is able to put on this series of seminars and one-on-one company mentoring and trainings through a generous grant that we received from DBET as part of the HISTEP program. And DBET's Jamie Lum will explain a little bit more about that in a few minutes. In turn, we must thank SBA also, because it's SBA in Washington, D.C. that originates the STEP program. So we thank both SBA and DBET for allowing us to be able to put on these programs. I bring up this web page here because this event that you're attending today is the last one of our 2022 cycle, and we'll be kicking off the 2023 cycle upcoming here in November. We don't have a firm slate of events yet, but we'll be working on that during the next couple of months to come up with a topic that, a series of topics that we think will be good for our Hawaii companies in 2023. But here is an archive of past events, approaching 100 videos here on our YouTube channel. So if you just go to YouTube and search for the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, you can find lots of interesting topics here. With that, I'd like to jump over to Jamie Lum, who's the HISTEP program manager at DBET, and she can tell us a bit more about HISTEP and then maybe give us a little bit of a clue about 2023. Jamie.
Aloha, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our webinar today regarding exporting to the Australia and New Zealand markets. And we thank those that are joining us from the U.S. Commercial Service and the FAS. Thank you for lending your expertise to our participants today. Appreciate it. So, as Rob mentioned, our Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program is funded through a grant that we received from the Small Business Administration, and we're happy to report that we just received another award for the upcoming federal fiscal year. So we're happy about that, to be able to continue doing the work of helping small businesses expand, grow and expand their business through selling their products and services in the global market. And that's the whole point of this program, and it's to help companies to make it, to give them information about exporting, and to help give them some events and activities that can help them grow their business, and to give them some financial support. So the program is open to companies that are new to export, as well as those who are looking to expand. We have three basic components, and thank you, Rob, for putting up our website on the HISTEP. So basically, we have our export readiness component, of which this webinar is a part of that. We offer a series of webinars in partnership with the Hawaii Pacific Export Council on various topics on exporting, like financing, like logistics, like IP, like how to do an international trade show, etc. And then we do topics such as those today that are market specific. What are the possibilities, or what kinds of goods and services may be good in particular markets, and in today's case, Australia and New Zealand. So we look forward to hearing more about that. That's our export readiness. As we also, as part of that, when companies register for HISTEP, we also put them in touch with one of our partner organizations to help them, guide them, and dig a little further into what their export experience is, and then try to help guide them a little bit in terms of what portions of the program would be beneficial to them. Our second component is our Hawaii Pavilions, as Rob is showing here. So these are the shows. Basically what we do is we designate, we select certain trade shows that we think will attract a good number of Hawaii companies, and we put together a Hawaii Pavilion. We try to make it affordable, so we basically subsidize a large portion, actually the majority of the cost for the trade show, and we charge a small participation fee, and we try to make it affordable for these small businesses to be a part of these very large trade shows. And then we also go in under the banner of this Hawaii, which is a very powerful marketing tool. And we found, and companies have found it to be advantageous to be part of a Hawaii Pavilion when going to these large trade shows. So we do have our Hawaii Pavilions. For 2023, as Rob was saying, almost all of those shows, with the exception of the fabrics, we will not be doing in Tokyo, and the bio. We will be doing natural products. We will have the Hankyu Fair and the Tokyo Gift Show. And then we're working with our Department of Agriculture to do the Gulf Food Show and FoodX Japan and IFIA. So you can look throughout the year. We'll be sending out announcements when we're starting to recruit companies. And you can contact us if you want to be a part of any of these pavilions. And then the final component is our company assistance. And this is where companies can apply for actual financial assistance to help. And this is on a reimbursement basis. You submit us your export plan. You give us a plan for how you want to use those funds. They can be used for things such as travel. They can be used for other trade shows. They can be used for Gold Key service with the U.S. Commercial Service. They can be used for product testing if you have a product that needs a certain type of certification in order to be sold into the market that you're interested in. So there, you can use it for translating your website, e-commerce, digital marketing. So there are a number of things that SBA allows you to use those funds for. We do anticipate that we will have applications out in early November for 2023, and applications will likely be due in early to mid-January. So again, be on the lookout for that announcement. It'll be on our website. And that's it in a nutshell. Companies can start by clicking on the registration. There's no cost to register, and we really are just trying to obtain some information about your company and what markets you're interested in, if you have any export experience. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we will put you in touch with one of our partner organizations to kind of begin some consultation with you and be able to look at other aspects of the program that could be beneficial for you. So that's it in a nutshell. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. You can just find, we're in the process right now of updating all of the information now that we know that we have another year of funding. We'll be throughout the month of October updating all of the information and getting ready for 2023. So just continue to check invest.hawaii.gov under the exporting for updates on HISTEP. So thank you, Rob, and thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. We're looking forward to the 2023 cycle. It's hard to believe that this event that we're in right now for Australia and New Zealand is actually our last event of the 2022 cycle, that we started this current cycle a year ago. It's hard to believe how quickly it's gone by, and we've seen some big changes in the world in terms of exporting, that countries are largely open again, which they weren't necessarily a year ago or even 6 months ago. And we're out traveling and exporting and attending trade shows. In fact, Jamie just returned from Japan. I'm currently in India working for some US companies, and so things are moving forward, and we're very happy about that. So next, I'd like to introduce our speakers from the Australia New Zealand side, and we thank them very much for working with us today and being here and sharing their expertise. First up is Eric Crowley. He's the from the U.S. Commercial Service. He's a Deputy Senior Commercial Officer for Australia and New Zealand, and he's going to give us a brief market overview. So please, Eric.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Aloha and good day, everyone. First, I'd like to thank our partners, the Hawaii Pacific Export Council and Hawaii Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism for helping to coordinate this webinar. And thanks to you all for taking the time to join us today. So Hawaii holds a warm place in my heart because my mom actually lives on the Big Island near Hilo. Today, we have an excellent lineup of speakers who are subject matter experts that will share their insights about some of the key sectors in Australia and New Zealand markets that are most relevant to Hawaii-based exporters. I'm going to start things off by taking a couple minutes to talk about our organization and how we can help you expand your sales into Australia, New Zealand, and beyond. Then I'll give a big picture overview of the Australia and New Zealand markets before turning it over to our other speakers that will drill down into specific industry sectors. At the end, we'll have some time for your questions and open discussion. So now I'd like to take a minute to introduce our agency and what we do. Our agency is known by several different names. Overseas, we're frequently referred to as the commercial section of the embassy or consulate, or as the Foreign Commercial Service, or FCS. We're part of the U.S. Department of Commerce and serve as the lead international trade and investment promotion arm of the U.S. federal government. FCS has a global footprint that covers about 91% of global GDP, with 130 offices in 75 countries and about 110 domestic offices across the United States that we call U.S. Export Assistance Centers, including one in Honolulu, which is run by our good colleague, John Holman, who wasn't able to join today. So we have a presence just about any place that you would want to do business. FCS has commercial diplomats like myself that transfer to a new country every few years. And more importantly, we have local commercial specialists that are our in-country subject matter experts that have deep local market knowledge, industry expertise, networks of key business contacts. And today's program features several of our local specialists to share their industry sector insights. FCS's mission is to promote U.S. commercial interests through the promotion of U.S. exports, attraction of job-creating foreign investment, commercial diplomacy designed to lower trade barriers, and advocacy to help U.S. companies compete for overseas government contracts. My understanding is that your main interest is exporting, so that's where we'll focus our presentation today. FCS promotes exports mainly by providing support services to help U.S. exporters sell into overseas markets. Let me highlight a few of our services that I think are most relevant to you. We offer different types of market intelligence, such as our country commercial guides that are available for free download from our online market research library at trade.gov. And we also offer custom-tailored initial market checks to gauge the sales potential for clients. We offer business matchmaking services, such as our international partner search and Gold Key service that help identify and connect you with potential agents and distributors. And we also offer due diligence reports called international company profiles to help U.S. exporters check the legitimacy of potential partners. We also organize promotional events for individual companies, tourist destinations, or regions seeking foreign investment. So that's a brief overview of who we are and what we do. Now let's take a couple minutes to look at the Australia and New Zealand markets. Australia and New Zealand offer U.S. companies relatively wealthy, sophisticated markets with very open business environments and stable democratic systems. There are few barriers to entry, familiar legal and corporate frameworks, business cultures that are English speaking and compatible with the US, and they're highly dependent on imports. So Australia and New Zealand are important and receptive markets for American goods and services. In terms of market size, Australia's population is 26 million and New Zealand's is 5 million. Australia's GDP is 1.4 trillion and New Zealand's is 213 billion. To put that into perspective, in terms of both population and GDP, compared to Hawaii, New Zealand is about 3 times larger than actually, New Zealand is about 3 times larger and Australia is about 19 times larger than Hawaii. Last year, Australia imported $26 billion worth of goods from the US, ranking it as our 16th largest export market. Since the Australia-US Free Trade Agreement was signed in 2005, trade has doubled and over 99% of US exports can now enter Australia duty-free. The main products Australia imported from the US include transportation equipment, machinery, chemicals, electronic products, food, and agricultural equipment. New Zealand imports from the US totaled $3 billion, with aircraft, agricultural machinery, information products, and healthcare products constituting the main items they bought from the US. Looking at Hawaii, last year, Australia ranked as your state's 4th largest export market, and New Zealand ranked 13th. In terms of market entry strategy, our recommendations for successfully entering the Australian and New Zealand markets are similar to what we'd recommend for many countries. It's important to first gain an understanding of the local market situation for a product or service, such as its competitors, standards, regulations, sales channels, etc. Success in these markets also typically requires establishing a local sales presence, such as appointing a local agent or distributor. In some cases, the agent or distributor can cover both Australia and New Zealand. Before entering a partnership, performing due diligence on potential partners is just as important in these countries as it is in the US. And it just so happens that the FCS services I described a bit earlier can help with all of these elements of successfully entering the market by providing market intelligence, business matchmaking, and due diligence services. So that's a brief overview of FCS and the Australia and New Zealand markets. I'm going to stop there and let my colleagues go into more detail about specific market sector opportunities. So now I'd like to turn things over to our senior commercial specialist, Monique Ruse, to talk about the tourism sector. Over to you, Monique.
Thanks, Eric, and hello, everyone. Australia is an important market for inbound tourism to Hawaii. Australia represents the 3rd largest source of international visitors to Hawaii after Canada and Japan. And in fact, Hawaii is the 2nd most popular US destination for Australian travelers. So the number 1 destination for Australian travelers to the US is California, and that's because that's Australians' main entry point to mainland USA. And then Hawaii jostles with New York for the number 2 position every year. It changes. Sometimes Hawaii's number 2, New York's number 3. Sometimes New York is number 2, Hawaii's number 3. But most importantly, you can see how popular the destination is for Australians. And approximately 340,000 Australians visit Hawaii each year, which is 25% or a quarter of Australian visitors to the US go to Hawaii. It's a 10-hour direct flight from Sydney to Honolulu, and there are 3 airlines that fly the route. So that's Hawaiian Airlines, Qantas, and Jetstar. So Australians typically stay about 10 days in Hawaii in hotels and resorts, and about 25% visit more than one island. Australia is one of the highest spending markets for Hawaiian inbound tourism. Australians are active and experiential travelers. They rent a car, they participate in soft adventure tours, they sightsee, they shop, they dine. They don't just go to the beach, they do things and they spend money. So an important characteristic of Australian tourists to Hawaii is that they're repeat travelers. So over 50% of Australians that visit Hawaii are repeat travelers. Australians obviously love to travel to Hawaii, and there's a strong positive sentiment. In fact, during the pandemic, anecdotally, Australians were dreaming of and planning their trip to Hawaii. So if you were talking to someone and they were talking about, when the borders would open and Australians were allowed to travel, so many people would just say, I'm planning a trip to Hawaii. There's pent-up demand, and we anticipate that the number of Australian travelers to Hawaii will rebound strongly. So if you need any more information, or if there's anything I can do to help you in the tourism sector, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and Rob will send you my details. And now I'll turn over to Rana Nushewat, who's our consumer goods commercial specialist.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Rana, and I'm based in Sydney with Eric and Monique, and I cover the consumer goods sector for Australia. Thanks for joining us. So the sector covers a diverse range of products, as you'd imagine. So in the coming 6 minutes or so, I'll talk briefly about general trends related to fitness, gift and homewares, and focus a bit on cosmetics. I'll also touch on e-commerce and some popular trade shows in Australia. So general trends in terms of sports, participation rates in fitness is generally higher in Australia than in many other countries, with market potential adjusted to Australia's relatively small population. Like Eric said, we're 25 million people. And 90% of the domestic demand is met by imports. US brands are valued for their quality and durability. And Australia's outdoor leisure experiences are wide and cover beaches, coral reefs, rivers, mountains, desert, rainforest. So think of all the sports related to that. Now, in terms of gifts and homewares, the market is estimated to be valued at $4 billion annually. Consumers have the appetite for high quality, unique, and innovative products. And the market has grown due to increase in online shopping and the rise in popularity of home renovation and home cooking reality television. According to the Australian Gift and Homeware Association, examples of products that buyers are seeking include books and stationery, handmade products, corporate gifts, homewares, lifestyle products, jewelry. And there's a lot of those pet accessories and health and well-being, to name a few. Now moving on to general trends in cosmetics. So we have estimated the cosmetics market to be $6.6 billion and approximately 45% of all consumption is imported. And like most markets, it's the multinationals that dominate the market. Export from the US are over $600 million. Traditionally, the market has been growing by 5% every year. And the general trend is that we have an aging population and greater participation by women in the workforce, and those factors are driving demand for cosmetics. Now, an interesting trend during COVID was the increased demand for eye makeup due to wearing masks. And I think a really important point to make is that Australia is not generally known for setting trends, but consumers are considered early adopters of international trends. Now you would think, how do I break into the market? And Eric touched on that. So three things: you need to be aware of regulatory requirements and satisfy those. You need to have the appropriate labeling on your packaging, and you need a distributor. In terms of regulations, cosmetics are regulated based on whether they make therapeutic claims or not. So if there are therapeutic claims, then these products are regulated by the Therapeutic Goods Administration. This is the Australian version of the FDA without the food part. Now, if the product is not making a therapeutic claim, even if it's listed as healthy, organic, or natural, then it's regulated by the Australian Industrial Chemicals Introduction Scheme. I won't get into labeling for the sake of time. But in terms of distribution, in Australia, retail concentration is very high. So you got two department stores, Myer and David Jones, which are like Macy's and Bloomingdale. Then there's the specialist cosmetic retailers, Sephora and Mecca. And you have a couple of pharmacy chains, Priceline and Chemist Warehouse. And plus you have two giant grocery stores, Coles and Woolworths, and they cover 70% of the grocery market. Now, all that means is that because there are relatively few retailers, there are also relatively few independent distributors. The good news is that we know these distributors and we can connect you to them. Now, briefly on e-commerce, the e-commerce spending in Australia last year reached $49 billion, and that's up from $38 billion in 2020. So in Australia, there are approximately 9.2 million households, and 4 out of 5 have made online purchases in 2021. The two largest e-commerce platforms are eBay Australia and Amazon Australia. Social media is a big driver in the promotion of business to consumer transactions, and Australia has over 13 million active Facebook users, to give you an example. Major fulfillment service providers here include Australia Post, DHL, FedEx, and Star Trek. And online payments, 48% of those are made via PayPal, 39% by credit card and debit cards. And the fastest growing segment is the buy now, pay later market. And the market leader is Afterpay. Now, finally, on trade shows, the Naturally Good show in May is one of those. And then you have the Beauty Expo in August. And we have the Sydney Gift Fair and the Melbourne Gift Fairs. And if anyone's interested in exhibiting at the Sydney Gift Fair in February 2023, please let me know because we're looking at a pavilion there. Anyway, that's it from me. Please don't hesitate to reach out with questions, and Rob will provide you with my email address. I will now pass on to Renee from the Office of Agricultural Service. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Rana. Rob, do you mind unsharing your screen? Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to get my presentation up.
While you're doing that, can I ask a quick question to Rana? Can you state again when that Sydney gift show was? That I think a lot of our companies would be quite interested in that.
That's excellent. That's February 2023. So we're kind of looking at expressions of interest at this point. So yeah, please email me if anyone's interested. I will discuss.
I'm confident you'll get some emails from this audience. So thank you for that.
Perfect.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Renee from the Foreign Agricultural Service. I'm located in Canberra, and also joining me for any questions is Lindy, the Agricultural Marketing Specialist in Australia, and Brendan, who's the Agricultural Marketing Specialist in New Zealand. The Foreign Agricultural Service focuses on helping U.S. companies export food and agricultural products into Australia and New Zealand. Both Australia and New Zealand are primarily consumer-ready industries. Both markets are pretty strong. Last year in 2021, the US exported $1.86 billion into Australia, and New Zealand imported $375 million into New Zealand. Eric touched on this a bit already, but Australia has a population of 26 million. It's the world's 13th largest economy and one of the highest levels of per capita GDP. As of September 2023, $1 Australian was 67 US cents. This is just to demonstrate that Australia is actually very similar size to the continental US. It's just a little smaller at 3 million square miles. And people normally don't know this because over 80% of the population is located in urbanized areas along the coast. As mentioned before, it's dominating the consumer-oriented products. In 2021, out of all the agricultural products exported to Australia, 74% of that was consumer-oriented. And it's also a very diverse product range. So it's not just one particular product. We have pork, food, pork, spirits, fresh fruit, dairy. And if we jump in a little further, I believe that there's some chocolate companies and confectionery companies. So in 2021, the US exported $40 million of chocolate products into Australia, which was the 5th biggest market, and $20 million of confectionery products, which was the 4th biggest market. There's just some threats and weaknesses to consider before you do enter this market. Australia has very strict quarantine requirements, and it's definitely something to keep in mind. Also, the labeling is different between the US and Australia. The good thing is that you don't have to relabel your products. You can just put a sticker over it. And Australia and New Zealand have the same labeling requirements. So once the label's ready for one country, it's fine for the other. There's also a big push to buy local. So just keep that in mind. It could be a little difficult to enter a new market as a US product. Just some basics on New Zealand. The population is a little over 5 million. There's 3 islands, the North, South, and Stewart, and it's ranked the 23rd per capita GDP, and 8% of that GDP is made up of agriculture. As of September 2022, 1 New Zealand dollar is 60 US cents. Going a little further into the consumer-oriented products, I don't have anything on the chocolates or confectionery, but if you did want those numbers, you can just reach out to us and we can find that for you. New Zealand has 4 main ports, but it looks like Auckland is the most popular one for food retailers, with 45% of incoming products going into New Zealand. And just going into some trade shows between Australia and New Zealand, Fine Food is one of the biggest trade shows in the Southern Hemisphere. It alternates between Sydney and Melbourne every year, and our next one will be in Sydney in 2023. There's also the Food Service Show, which will be in Melbourne this year in June. New Zealand has Fine Food every other year, and it's coming up this year in 2023. So if you did want any more information about that, feel free to reach out to anyone in our offices. And our office also releases annual reports. Food and agricultural import regulations and standards is probably a good one to look at in order to see the market. They're released every year and they're available online from the FAS USDA website. That's it for me. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Lindy for Australia and Brendan in New Zealand. Now we'll move on to Janet from the commercial services in New Zealand.
Thank you, Renee. That was great. So hello, everybody. I'm based in Wellington. Brendan from our agriculture service is also in our building. So I work for the US Commercial Service and my colleagues are in Sydney, Rana, Eric and Monique. So we are very close in terms of what we do. So Wellington is one of 3 main urban centres. The other 2 are Christchurch in New Zealand's South Island, and the largest city in New Zealand is Auckland in the North Island. So Auckland's around about 1.6 million people now, and definitely growing. But so is its closest city, Hamilton. It is currently round about 1:35 in New Zealand on a Wednesday, and if I got things right, it will be 3:35 in Hawaii. So we actually have quite a good crossover in terms of time. The other thing that we share is Hawaii and New Zealand have Kupe, the Polynesian explorer who discovered New Zealand around about 1,000 years ago. These days, most people coming to New Zealand will arrive by air, around about 99%. And pre-COVID, 99% of all the products and services that came to this country came by sea freight. That figure's changed a wee bit because during COVID, some of the perishables had to go by air. Currently, both Hawaii Airlines and Air New Zealand are operating flights. Of course, they weren't for a long time. Each airline is operating round about 3 flights per week, which is about 50 to 60% of the pre-pandemic capacity. Before the pandemic, in 2019, 74,000 New Zealanders arrived in Hawaii. That figure has obviously gone down a bit, but the industry here is very, very supportive of Hawaii tourism. We have the Hawaii Visitors Bureau in New Zealand, and they're working hard to make that figure increase. Eric mentioned that the main imports from Hawaii are aerospace products, and although we're very close to you and we've got very many similarities, we don't have many fast-moving consumer goods coming in from Hawaii, so we should change all that, I think. At the moment, apparel and food items is fairly low, and so is cosmetics and toiletries. I know there's a few of you online today for cosmetics and toiletries, and the best way of describing the market here for that sector is we're quite mature. It's a competitive market, and the consumers here tend to be very brand aware and very price sensitive. And even over the last couple of days, the New Zealand dollar has dropped even further. It is now 58 US cents in value, which makes it quite hard sometimes. In terms of where we are sourcing cosmetics and toiletries, Australia is supplying around about a quarter of what we have on the market here, but the US is in the second position, followed by France. We do follow for all types of foreign fast-moving consuming goods, international trends. Natural products are particularly popular, and we're also an aging population. So those things do matter when it comes to what a consumer will purchase. For the cosmetics sector and toiletries, we don't have any import licensing requirements. And companies that come into this market must comply with the cosmetics standard, which is actually well written for US companies. Many years ago, the US and New Zealand Cosmetic and Toiletries Associations got together and wrote the standard. So if you can sell in Hawaii, you can sell in New Zealand. I have found that many companies are using the experience of online platforms to be helpful to gauge the market size. And in this country, we have Amazon, and we also have a local firm called themarket.com. So if you want to test the market for your product, please reach out to me, because I can introduce you to themarket.com, and they'll be very pleased to have a dialogue with you. The other thing that we are all doing in our markets, but no one's raised it here today, is we also promote states of the USA for business investment destinations. So if there's an economic development organization online today, I'd be very pleased to chat about how we can promote Hawaii to New Zealand investors. We got some market research out this morning to say that New Zealand is the second highest ranking source of FDI into the United States, which is pretty amazing for a small country of 5 million. So if you would like to have a wee chat about that, I'd be very happy to do that offline. So thank you for your time today. If you have any questions, I'll be pleased to answer them in the Q&A. And Rob, I think it's over to you now for Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much to everybody. These were wonderful presentations and really just what we're looking for and what our companies are interested in hearing about. There are some questions that have come in. One in the Q&A function about, this is, I think, would be targeted at Monique, regarding tourism. Do you have any idea which island of Hawaii the tourists from Australia are going to the most? I do. I'm going to jump in and just say it's very likely Oahu, because that's where the flights are coming into. I don't think that there's direct flights between Australia and any other island. But once they get to Oahu, do you know if they're going anywhere else to the Big Island or Maui or Kauai or what?
Yes, so in terms of popularity, Oahu by far is the most popular. If you have 300,000 Australians going to Hawaii each year, over 300,000, then about 300,000 of them go to Oahu. The next most popular destination is Maui, that sees about 50,000 Australians. Then the Big Island, that sees 40,000 Australians, and Kauai, 30,000 Australians. So the Hawaii Tourism Authority does a lot of promotion of all the islands, and what they're really trying to do is trying to get Australians to go to more than one island.
Right. Oh, that's great data. I'm glad that you had all of that. There was a question about travel now, traveling to Australia and New Zealand. Is it easy? Are there any quarantines that are required, vaccines required, anything like that right now?
I can answer that for Australia. So no, there are no restrictions. So you don't need proof of vaccination. There's no quarantine. you just come into Australia. What people from Hawaii do have to do, or any American has to do, you do have to apply for an electronic travel authority. So it's loosely termed, like it's like an online visa, so to speak, but it's almost instantaneous. So you just apply for that online, an electronic travel authority, but you don't need to show proof of vaccination, and you don't need to quarantine.
Is there an ETA needed for New Zealand? Do you know? I think there is.
For New Zealand, we changed our regulations literally last week. Visitors can arrive without masks, but I was at the airport last week and I was asked for my vaccination proof. So I think even though we've changed how things are operating, the airlines are slow to introduce the new changes. So if anyone's planning to come to New Zealand, I would be very sure to have in my paperwork that you have had all your vaccinations, just to avoid any stress at the airport.
Okay.
Janet raises a good point. You do have to check, make sure you check with the airlines to see what the airlines regulations are, not just the country regulations.
Sure.
They tend to work a little slower than the governments with all these changes.
Sure. Next question is for Rana. Regarding incoming cosmetics such as lotions and sunscreens and these types of things. First of all, are those considered cosmetics? And secondarily, what the testing that is required, do you have any experience for how rigorous are those tests? How costly are those tests? Do you know anything about that?
Well, generally, Rob, it's a very good question, and we get it all the very frequently. The moment the TGA, which is the Therapeutic Goods Administration, gets involved, then you're talking about rigorous tests and a lot of expenses, because traditionally the TGA would send someone from here to travel to the manufacturing site to the US and look into all these ingredients and tests. But that's only if the product is claiming therapeutic claims. So there's a lot of wording that's involved, and I'm happy to share links on specifics on what makes a cosmetic and what makes it like under the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Sunscreens are also a specific side of this, where it depends on the SPF that's in the sunscreen. So I think if it's more than 15%, then it falls under the TGA, and then you get all those requirements that companies have to fulfill. So it's very specific, and I'm happy to share links on that.
That would be great. I'm sure some of our companies will be contacting you. You may be aware that Hawaii has kind of led the way in their sunscreen laws now, that there are certain 3 chemicals that are not allowed in sunscreens because they're dangerous to the reef and coral. Yeah. And so I think that those products from Hawaii would probably be good for the Australian market. But anyway, we need to find out more about what's required for the testing.
And another thing to keep in mind is the ozone here, that the requirements are probably more strict than any other country because of, so what I'm just giving a random example. If it's like 60 SPF in the US, by the time it gets regulated here, it's probably 40 SPF because it's so strict. And good point about fish safe and reef safe, and those are also more and more added to the sunscreens. Yeah.
Okay, I think, Rana, this next question is for you also. That you mentioned Facebook, and it seemed like there were a lot of Facebook users in Australia.
I lost you, Rob.
that also include Instagram? Just because a lot of our Hawaii companies use Instagram as their first social media platform for marketing.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I mentioned Facebook because it's the largest here, but yeah, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all those, YouTube. So yeah, whatever is common in the outside world, it's just, yeah, we have a large number of users.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question would be, I think, for Renee. This is largely for importation of alcohol. Is that strict or difficult? A lot of our Hawaii companies that export alcohol have tried doing that in Japan, and they find that that's not the easiest thing in the world, bringing alcohol into Japan. And we're curious about Australia and New Zealand. Do you have any comment on that?
I think Lindy's going to answer this. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll just jump in there. It's not, we import a lot of alcohol from the United States, so it's not that it's difficult, it's that there are high taxes, which you know, increases prices, but Australians are used to paying high prices for alcohol, so it doesn't defeat, you know, the purpose of exporting. So it's certainly a good market for alcohol, you know, for alcohol, probably more along the spirits line. We do import a lot of wine, but we also make a lot of wine. So yeah, probably more along something that's different would be good. I also just wanted to add on to what Renee said about the trade shows, is that the Fine Food Trade Show is endorsed by the United States Department of Agriculture, which means that there are funds available through the state regional trade groups in which I think for Hawaii it would be the Western US Trade Association, WSADA. They have funding available to help you exhibit at the show. We also have a very large USA Pavilion at that show. Hawaii has participated in the past, but as I think the Hawaii Department of Agriculture brought a number of exhibitors a couple of times, but individual companies are welcome as well. There's a recruitment company called IMEX Management in North Carolina North or South Carolina who do the recruitment and help get you set up for that. So if anyone is interested in a trade show, you know, contact us or
yeah, Renee had put up on her slide, she had some trade shows that looked interesting. I was curious if all of those or any of those have US pavilions.
Only Fine Food is the only one. We're only allowed to endorse one show. The food service show is growing in size. It was relatively small. It's not quite as big as Fine Food, but it's targeted at the food service market. So if that's what your target audience, it's probably slightly better than Fine Food. And I think funding is available through the state regional groups, even if the show's not endorsed, and your other programs that people were talking about earlier as well. Yeah.
Okay, there's a question, a rather specific question about importing dried native Hawaiian herbs to New Zealand. Would there be any issue there, or what would be the process? Who would this company reach out to for some assistance with that?
They could reach out to us, depending on the species and everything. There's as Renee said, there's very specific quarantine regulations. So if it would have to be on the permitted list. You know, things like sticks and twigs and seeds and things will cause an issue, but there is an online database that that everyone has access to through the Australian Department of Agriculture, that you can specify what herbs you're bringing or whatever. But we can help you navigate that.
Okay, thank you. Here's another quite specific question. Can Hawaii farms or agricultural businesses that do carbon capture and sequestration readily sell any carbon credits they generate on New Zealand's carbon credit market? The online carbon credit market?
Well, that's an interesting question.
If you have any idea about what's going on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brendan from FAS Wellington. Most likely not. You'd need to actually contact an official in your Department of Agriculture who would have to verify that with the Ministry of Primary Industries in New Zealand, because that's quite a technical thing, and the carbon market here is quite contentious. So I would say in your first instance, it's best to go through government official channels rather than just kind of go off and try and do it. So that would be the best advice I could give on that.
Great. Okay, thank you. I think that is all of the questions that have come in. If there's any last minute questions, please type them in or text them to me. I'd just like to make one final plug again. Eric had mentioned John Holman, and he is a U.S. Commercial Service Officer in Honolulu, and he can really act as your window to communicating with any of these speakers. Of course, you're welcome to contact them directly, but for other markets that are not Australia, New Zealand, Japan, or Korea, or anywhere else in the world, John Holman would be a primary contact for you to get that conversation going with those countries. And when I send out an email later, I will include John Holman's information. The quick question again about carbon credits. Do any of our speakers know about the Australian situation with the carbon credits?
No, I don't have any information about that. That's someone else in our office who's not currently available. But yeah, I don't know whether carbon trading is permitted here yet or what they're exactly doing. So, I mean, you could send us the question, and we can ask
Sure.
We can help out.
Another question came in about, does New Zealand have a gift trade event other than the Fine Foods event that you're aware of?
Yes, it does. Yes, we have one in Christchurch and we have one in the Auckland area, and they were not running during the pandemic, so I would have to check the dates for when they're next happening. It could be next year or late this year. I'm not sure, sorry.
Okay, great. If you could look into that and email it to me, and I'll send it out to the attendees just so they have it in their record. That would be great. Thank you. Okay, with that, let's close. We're running up here to an hour. So again, from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, this is Rob Hack, and we would very much like to thank DBET and SBA for the funding that allows us to put on these programs. And then specifically today for this Australia-New Zealand event, I'd very much like to thank the speakers who joined us from Australia and New Zealand. They put a lot of work into researching what is important to Hawaii companies and the exports that are possible from Hawaii. And we greatly appreciate all of their effort and their time for joining us today. So thank you very much, and aloha to everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world, and look for us again for the 2023 cycle, which will be announcing some events and a draft schedule coming up in November. And we will have some kickoff events on the various islands in November. With that, again, thanks everybody, and have a wonderful day.